Welcome to the channel. I'm Jan from corporate, and this is my close friends. In my close friends, we talk about movies and we talk about books. So, for the month of February, I had 7 books on my TBR. They were Monday's Not Coming by Tiffany D. Jackson, Missing White Woman by Kelly Garrett, The Between by Tanana Reeve Dew, The City We Became by N.K. Jemisin, Model Home by River Solomon, The Reformatory, which was my second book by Tanana Reeve Dew, and then finally, The Landlord by Brandon Massey. So basically, when I was picking out my TBR for the month of February, I was just looking for thrillers, crime dramas, suspense, and stuff like that. Only 2 of the books really were on brand with what I was looking for, but they were still pretty good books. I'm just going to go in the order of how I read them. I'm also going to give you reviews on them and potential spoilers. So the first book I read was Monday's Not Coming by Tiffany D. Jackson. It is a YA novel about a girl whose best friend goes missing during their 8th grade year. What made me want to read this particular novel is that Tiffany D. Jackson has been described as the Dick Wolf of YA, which, as an avid SVU watcher, that was very appealing to me. This ultimately wasn't what I expected. I've read quite a few YA series that were more crime drama and mystery leaning. However, they weren't realistic. Now that I'm thinking about it, like I've read The Naturals and I've read The Fixer, which follows literal teenagers working with law enforcement and governmental agencies to solve different conspiracies and murders. So it was refreshing to see that this particular novel was explored from the perspective of a child who acts like a child. So, Monday's Not Coming starts with our main protagonist, Claudia. She has a best friend named Monday, and over the summer, when she was visiting her grandmother in Georgia, she and Monday were supposed to be writing letters back and forth to each other, but she never received anything from Monday. When she's telling her parents about it, everyone's just not really thinking anything of it, like, oh, well, she probably forgot, maybe she couldn't get the stamps, or whatever the case may be. Um, and so basically, when school starts, she doesn't see Monday there, and several weeks and then later months pass by, no word from Monday. She's run into a few family members from Monday's side of the city, and still nothing. Everybody has like a conflicting story as to where they last saw Monday or where she might be. Um, she even gets law enforcement involved, and basically she gets to run around from them like, oh, we solve real crimes, not the fact that your friend didn't want to be friends with you. It is later revealed that Claudia is dyslexic, which could contribute to some of her anxiety around Monday being gone, because throughout their time in school, Monday has helped Claudia a lot with her different assignments. Sometimes she's flat out done homework for her. So when we get into like the middle of the book, it's been months since we last seen Monday. Claudia's grades have started to dwindle significantly, and that's when the teachers and her parents find out that she's dyslexic. There was some sort of test that they took with like a special blue paper. She passed with flying colors on that particular test, but she was flunking everywhere else, and that's when they realized that there was some sort of problem. So the insecurity that she has with having dyslexia and having to go to the quote unquote stupid classes, coupled with the fact that everybody's giving her the runaround, kind of deepens Claudia's suspicions that she's never going to find Monday because no one's taking her seriously. Now, I will say, Monday is a little black girl going missing in the DMV area, and I want to say that this book was written and published around the time where there were a lot of young black women disappearing in the DMV area. So the worst case scenario is confirmed in that situation, but that is only the tip of the iceberg with just how sinister her death was and just how heartbreaking the revelation was. Overall, I gave this book a 10 out of 10. I definitely recommend it if you are raising young black girls or even if you're raising young black boys or any other black child. I think this would be great required reading. Now, for this to be a YA book, there are some bluer notes to it. I wouldn't have you reading this to like an elementary schooler. This is a more mature YA novel, if you will. I would humbly recommend that you wait until they're at least in the 10th grade because there are some themes that are just a hair too blue for most kids. But this book definitely put Tiffany D. Jackson in a must read category for me. Personally, she has two books coming out this year. She has a book coming out in May that's like a young reader book, and she has another YA novel coming out in October. I want both. So, the next book I want to read, though, in the meanwhile, would have to be Allegedly. So, I'm going to try to find that soon. So after Monday's Not Coming, I read Missing White Woman, which was my palate cleanser. It's a lot more on brand for the thrillers that I was looking for. What interests me about this particular book is that reading the synopsis kind of reminded me of Double Jeopardy, the movie with Ashley Judd. It's about this girl who's on a vacation with her new boyfriend, Ty. Her name is Brianna, and he seems to be a pretty good guy. You know, he's a stand up guy, he's a Kappa, he works in tech, he's a real tech bro, not the Forex, like he went to school for it. He's working at JP Morgan. And he's doing a lot of work out in Jersey City, so he decides to invite her for a little vacation that weekend. Things are going pretty well, but he is a bit of a workaholic, so he's having to go away to answer calls. He's taking hours at a time to work on something, and he seems to be very passionate about whatever this project is. This causes him and Bree to argue at one point. Like, he snaps on her a little bit and she kind of storms off. But when she comes back, he's apologetic and he does vow to make it up to her. Basically, he's going to go to work really early the next day and then come home even earlier so that they can spend the day with each other and have like an extra day on their vacation. However, the next day when she wakes up, he's nowhere to be found, but there is a bludgeoned white woman at the base of her stairs. Each floor is kind of soundproof, so she didn't hear anything. She just knows that there is a dead white woman at the bottom of her stairs. So, where this gets sticky is that there is a woman in the community that has been missing for over a week named Janelle. She's gone viral on TikTok. Like Find Janelle or Justice for Janelle or something has gone viral on TikTok. There isn't much about her missing case that proves that there was any foul play or even that she's missing. The only thing that people are going off of is that she never reported for work and no one has heard from her, but she doesn't have any family or even a lot of friends. The only thing that she has is there's a TikToker who's like this really big makeup artist named Billy, who I guess she follows Billy, and now Billy is acting as if she and Janelle are the best of friends. So it's being blown up, coupled with the news that there was this white woman who matches Janelle's description was found in some random Airbnb. The story blows up overnight. And even though Brianna is not a person of interest, despite finding her, Ty shoots to the top of the suspect list because he's nowhere to be found. And as the story progresses, you find out that he did indeed know Janelle, and at one point they dated when they were in college. So before Brianna can really deal with the fallout of what's going on, her old friend from college, Adore, shows up. Now, the thing about Adore was her best friend since like middle school, but Adore left Brianna high and dry. One day, she was bringing Adore home after Adore had an argument with her crazy boyfriend, and Adore got out the car and wanted to go back with the boyfriend randomly. Bree was so caught up and so distracted by being angry with that situation that she ran a red light. No one was hurt, but the cop that pulled her over was way too overzealous. She wasn't very kind to the cop, so he took special pleasure in doing whatever he wanted to. That sounds really bad. He took special pleasure in basically antagonizing her. And he even went as far as planting a nickel bag in her back seat. Because of that, she ended up being arrested. Nobody believed her, not even her own mother. She was encouraged to take a plea deal, and she spent 3 months in prison. She never graduated. She has a record now, and basically all the dreams that she had of becoming this this high powered attorney, this big shot lawyer, went down the drain. She's still working the same job and living in the same studio that she lived in when she was an undergrad. Whereas when she sees Adore again for the first time in like 10 years, Adore is living the life that they always dreamed of. She has a Tesla, she's wearing designer clothes, she has a Birkin bag, she is just everything that Bree and her were supposed to be together. So that kind of deepens her resentment, especially since not only did your situation caused me to leave that party early, and that's how this whole situation started. You left me high and dry. You went to my mother when I asked you not to, and I haven't heard from you since. But Adora attempts to right her wrongs with Bree. She also eventually apologizes to her, and basically she helps Bree get into the clear and helps clear Ty's name. Now, this book, I gave it a good 8.9 to 9 out of 10. It was a really good book, very well written. It's a great commentary on just how wonky social media can be when it comes to true crime. You know, people forget that these are real people, these are real lives being affected, and they get so caught up in like the sensationalism of it all. The character of Billy was really frustrating. I think that Kelly Garrett did an amazing job of depicting her because it's like basically some women like Billy use true crime as an extension of Karenism, and I think they did an amazing job depicting that in the book. The only issue that I had was that there wasn't like some final showdown between the culprit where I'm kind of used to like culprits giving the full this is what I did, here's my motive, and here's how I'm going to get away with it. I wish we could have gotten that with this, just so we could have gotten exactly what happened and why. We're kind of stuck in Brianna's perspective and whatever she assumed happened there. Which, I mean, I think she got it pretty. She got most of the details, but I would have liked to have just that final confirmation. Yeah, really good book. And even though it was a thriller and a suspense novel, there wasn't a lot of like high stakes or like oh shit moments like oh something's gonna happen. I thought that somebody would end up stuck in somebody's basement. I thought that somebody would end up at least held at gunpoint. Like I felt like we were going there at several points, but I was wrong. So ultimately, it's a great book. I would definitely read more from her catalog. She wrote some book called Like a Sister. If that's another thriller, I will definitely look into that. After Missing White Woman, I read The Between by Tanana Reeve Dew. This is my first Tanana Reeve Dew book, and it was amazing. So, the main protagonist, Hilton, has been surrounded by death his whole life. When he was a child, he ended up finding his grandmother dead on the floor. He went to get help, and then when he came back, the corpse that was before him ended up just standing up, walking around, and it was all good. Everyone's acting like he was crazy. A few years later, he almost drowns, but his grandmother saves him, but she's unable to save herself. From that point, he started having these really vivid nightmares that began to haunt his sleep. Once he became an adult, he started taking different supplements and caffeine pills and everything you can think of to stay up and forcing himself into insomnia so he wouldn't have to deal with those dreams. Later in life, he gets married. He and his wife start having marital problems, coupled with his insomnia, coupled with the terrible nightmares. There's just a lot of chaos going on into his family. So they end up going to marriage counseling. They're able to mediate a lot of their marital problems, and he starts seeking personal counseling with the same therapist. And after that, he's able to cure a lot of his nightmares. Then, fast forward like 10 years later, his wife becomes the circuit judge or something like that in Miami, and she starts receiving death threats from an old, I guess, prisoner, client, whatever, basically somebody that she charged. He has promised to take their family out, and here comes the nightmare circling back. As Milton goes back into forcing insomnia, he starts to become a shell of himself. He's concerning everybody around him because he's showing up with these deep bags under his eyes. He's hallucinating. He's seeing things that have already happened, seeing things that didn't happen. Like one time he goes to a basketball game with his therapist. They're friends now. And the therapist usually wears like, I forgot, like a New York Knicks jersey or something, but he didn't have it on, and Hilton didn't notice that until hours later when he had been seeing the therapist wearing that jersey the whole night. It's little things like that, or like he knew about a stack of entry patients that he had never seen before. He knew exactly what was in the file, how many patients, what their issues were, where they needed to go before he ever saw the file. It's little things like that that's kind of getting a bunch of side eyes. But as the book progresses and Charles Ray Gooding, who is the stalker, becomes more of a thorn in their side, he starts becoming more violent. He wants a gun for the house. He starts bucking shots at the neighbors, which was actually kind of funny because the neighbor is kind of racist, but hey. Um, Basically, his wife is afraid that he's going to become a family annihilator between the psychosis that he's going through from lack of sleep. At one point, he has to leave his home because it's gotten so bad between him and his wife, and he's scaring the hell out of his family and his children. And basically, he ends up finding out that he is the living dead. When Hilton drowned or almost drowned in that ocean, he was supposed to be dead. So from then on, he's been living on borrowed time, and he's had so many different brush-ins with death. But to make matters worse, he sees all these vivid visions of himself or his children dying because his children technically shouldn't be there. Because Hilton is the living dead and he's walking on borrowed time, that means that he should have never been able to have kids. So their existence is even more flimsy than his own. So it comes to a point where he has to choose between saving himself and saving his kids, coupled with the background of this deranged racist on his family's back. It was a really good book. It focuses more on the mundane rather than the crime of it all. You see how Hilton and by extension his family and career begin to dwindle because of the psychosis, because of the hallucinations, because of the general confusion and disorientation of him being without sleep. And I think that Tanana Reeve did an amazing job. I gave this a solid 10 out of 10. Now, the next book that I was supposed to read, which is The City We Became by N.K. Jemisin, got a DNF almost instantly. This is a fantasy book, and I'm not sure exactly what I was expecting. I don't know if I was expecting this to be more of like a graphic novel or I don't know. I wasn't expecting it to be so fantasy centered. I don't know why, but it's not to down N.K. Jemisin. I'm sure that she has an amazing repertoire of books, but I am not a fantasy buff. If you are, I think you might like this one. There's some commentary about gentrification and how it rears its ugly head. I think there are like 3 different perspectives told in this particular book. So I definitely recommend it if you are into fantasy. I personally am not.